The next session is all about transparency and trust. And Robin Buttle from AppNexus is here today to share with us a case with Microsoft. And he will take no questions afterwards. No, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. Microsoft signed that he cannot say anything. So that's
I can have lots of questions out in the
in the
lobby.
Yeah, exactly, not officially. So I know Robin for many years, and Robin has been working with the publisher side and data since 1974.
Since I was born, as far as I
yeah,
remember,
exactly.
Yeah.
So this is the guy who knows everything about data and transparency on the sales side. So please go ahead.
Great, thank you.
And please ask questions afterwards, and let's see if he can answer them.
Do I have a clicker? Yes.
Just because I worked in Microsoft before, so I know he can answer.
Is that on? Yeah, sounding good. Great. All right, look at this. So many people come to listen to a talk on trust and transparency. Yay. It's great to see. You know, this is one of the most important topics in the industry that often gets overlooked, in my opinion. I mean, with so much else going on, it's easy to get distracted. I mean, I could be talking about connected television growing 2,000% year on year. Woo! Yay for those guys. And machine learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence, two of the most exciting buzzwords in the industry at the moment that seem to be taking over. For me, though, AI is probably Joel Haley Osment playing a small robot child looking for love in the film AI. But I could talk about that all day. And then blockchain, something I definitely can't talk about because I literally don't get it, despite having attended many IAB webinars. And virtual reality, this is my favorite one. This is the one, in my opinion, that's going to change the world beyond any recognition over the next decade, 50 years. I don't know how long it's going to take, but has anyone seen Ready Player One? Yes, a few geeks in the room, fantastic. That is going to happen. It's not a great film. It's a great book. It's an okay film. What happens in that, there's basically virtual worlds, and people can go off and play games on different planets and all sorts of things. They could do dancing with a dancing instructor, all in virtual reality. Point is, this is going to take over, and it's going to be filled with advertising one day. You heard it here first. Anyway, you can see that stuff gets me pretty excited, which is why a year ago I published a science fiction novel about virtual reality. And here it is. All right, so I think I can guess what some of you are thinking. Did he write a science fiction novel, or didn't he? And that's exactly my point. In today's world of super exciting high-tech stuff, is the drive for results and the drive for new developments sacrificing what's important? I mean, you can literally tell anyone anything, and it doesn't have to be true. OK, hang on. So before I get sued, just to be clear, Stephen King has not read my book, nor has he commented on it. That's right, this is fake news. The true author of this quote is my mother. So fake news is old news. But what about fake ads? This is, I'm from the UK. This is Martin Lewis. He runs a website called Martin's Money Saving Tips that helps millions of online users save money. He's suing Facebook because his face keeps appearing on ads from God knows what businesses or even scams with quotes of things he's never said. And he's complained to Facebook repeatedly, and they're not doing anything about it. Well, they haven't managed to do anything about it, I should say. The question is, why is it so easy for these poor quality ads to appear on Facebook? Boom, fake ads. That happens a few times. So you're all familiar with the alleged influence that Russia had in the US election. What about this one in the UK? This is an ad from Facebook in the run-up to Brexit, coming from the Vote Leave campaign, which is a cross-party coalition of the major parties, people who wanted to encourage people to leave the EU. This is one of their ads. Albania, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Turkey are all joining the EU. Seriously. And then there's the ISIS video. You're all familiar with that 3.5 years ago. But 3.5 years later, the same thing is still happening. You've got 300 companies recently pulling budgets from YouTube due to concerns over extremist and paedophilic material. And the list goes on and on. This is just the stuff that makes it to the headline news. The internet should be a tool that's enabling creativity and knowledge and human engagement, but it's dominated by negativity. It's not safe for the brands that fund it. It's riddled with fake news and hate speech. The supply chain has got loads of bad actors siphoning off dollars left, right, and center, and the users getting bad experiences and having their privacy violated, as we heard today already. You can't tell me, with all the money that these big companies have, that the greatest minds in ad tech can't fix these problems. So what can we do about it? As an industry, we need to come together to make advertising transparent, efficient, and safe. So transparent, I mean visible pricing for ad tech, visible pricing for buyers and sellers. And if you have that, and buyers can see all the way through the supply chain what they're buying, they can be more efficient in their buying. So they can get better results, bring more money into the ecosystem, which will hopefully lead to higher CPMs for publishers, more money for publishers, which means better content for the brands and better content for the consumers. So everyone starts to win. And it needs to be safe, of course. Brands shouldn't be worrying about brand safety, data leakage, bad actors, and consumers shouldn't be worrying about their privacy. So I want to take you guys through a case study from Microsoft. They've been working in the programmatic industry for a long time. They've got some really great things they've been working on, stuff that everyone can be thinking about that's pretty straightforward to do. It just takes prioritization and investment. From a broader view, Microsoft have declared that privacy is a human right, something I wholeheartedly agree with. And although it probably fills everyone in this room with dread, as we've just heard, GDPR is for everyone, according to Microsoft, and probably going to hit LATAM at some point too. The point is, Microsoft believe in trust and transparency, and the same goes for AppNexus. So it made sense when the two companies came together in 2011 to launch the Microsoft Advertising Exchange. One of the first things that Microsoft did was create a new type of creative audit. So thinking about the ad quality that you're seeing across many of these platforms is actually quite straightforward to fix. All Microsoft did was insist on a new type of audit. So on one hand, you had technology scanning for malware, and on the other hand, you have a human looking at the creative to check for nudity or whatever it may be. It's not difficult. It just requires, like I said, an investment in people. Every single creative that comes onto the platform is audited by a person looking at the ad. It's good for the brands because they don't appear next to any other funky creative. It's good for the consumers because they don't see anything they don't want to see, and it's obviously good for the publisher. Just going to take a sip. So one of the most successful moves they made in 2015 was going 100% programmatic in 50 markets. The publishers realized, so MSN, Outlook, etc., they realized that they need to design the website with programmatic in mind, meaning the content needs to be engaging and the ads well placed amongst it so that the ads themselves are engaging to drive high performance. That's kind of obvious, but not everyone gets it right. But also, things like viewability. You can't get away with low viewability in programmatic anymore. Buyers just simply cut you off the plan. And so they've invented what they call load-on-scroll technology. Any ads below the fold won't appear until the user scrolls down. So the viewability is really high, and actually it's good for the consumers as well because the page loads a lot faster. And then on the brand safety side of things, again, it's pretty straightforward. There's simply tons of people checking every single article that goes onto the MSN website to make sure there's nothing fake or anything too extreme. The point, again, here is, red stamp, this is not that difficult. It just takes prioritization effort, whether it's technology developments, which are all very straightforward, or human investment, putting people on the ground to check all this stuff. So that's kind of the more straightforward stuff, like I said. Everyone can do that if they want to do it. It just takes prioritization. But this is kind of some of the less obvious stuff in programmatic, maybe a little bit more technical, some of it. This slide, you may have seen something like this before. Don't know. On one hand, you've got the advertiser pumping $1 into the ecosystem, and on the other hand, you've got the publisher receiving only 40 cents. And a whole bunch of people in the middle, ad tech providers or whoever, taking a cut of the money, trying to add some value. The question is, are they adding value or not? Some of them will be, some of them won't be. And how do you know? And so now we're going to look into some slides on how you can bring transparency into that supply chain, and in doing so help you optimize your buying. So first off, transparent auctions. Any auction, whether it's art, real estate, digital advertising, needs to be transparent if it's going to function fairly. How would you know how to bid in an auction if you don't know how your bid will be evaluated? Yeah, this is the situation that many programmatic buyers, even today, find themselves in. When programmatic first started, all auctions were second price, meaning if you win the auction, you pay as much as the next highest bidder. But with the advent of header bidding, things got a bit different. Some SSPs were submitting first price bids into the auction in an attempt to boost their win rate. Some didn't. Add it to an already extraordinarily complicated auction dynamic, and it gets pretty confusing. But don't worry, I get this pretty well, so I built this diagram to help explain. Okay, so the point is, these days, buyers don't know whether they're being first priced or second priced. So it becomes incredibly important to bring transparency into auctions. From Microsoft's perspective, they took a leading stance here back in 2017. All of their supply on the AppNexus platform is now broadcasting transparently, whether it's a first price or second price, and indeed what the actual floor price is. It's a pretty easy thing for publishers to do. Most of the SSPs support this kind of technology. It just requires a switch to turn it on. Mic drop. All right, so supply path optimization, or SPO for short. So this is really about, for buyers, finding the most efficient way to supply. It's about working through the effect of the disappearing ad tech dollar slide that I just showed, and about working through the effects of header bidding. If you do SPO, then you should find that your costs as a buyer go down, but because you're being more efficient, the publisher on the far side should also get higher CPMs, and again, that's good for content, it's good for the consumers, it's good for everybody. The kind of things that you might be looking at when you're SPOing is impression requests. Can you see all the supply available from that publisher through this path? You might look at CPMs. The same publisher might list their inventory of different floor prices in different SSPs, or the SSPs might, for some reason, have higher floor prices in place. And win rates. You might choose a different DSP to buy the same supply, or different ad tech providers along the way before you reach that supply. And depending on the fees being charged there, your bid at the time of auction can be lower, therefore reducing your win rate. It gets pretty complicated, but it's important to work through. From Microsoft's perspective, they've never had any header bidding, never had any waterfall model. All of their supply has been in one place, making it as easy as possible for buyers to reach it. So of course, in terms of these metrics, if it's all in one place, you can see all the supply no matter where you're coming from. There's only one set of floor prices. And in terms of fees, more on that to come in a minute, but their fees have never changed between platforms because, again, they've only got one platform. So that doesn't mean, of course, you could buy, for example, Microsoft supply from one DSP and a different DSP, get different winning bids or different win rates because of all the stuff that's sitting in between you and the supply. So it's really important to find out, as a buyer, exactly kind of what that path looks like, depending on the technology you're using. It's not easy, and simply the go-do is talk to your DSP or your supply chain to try and understand better how to optimize your supply path. All right, an easy one, ads.txt. So ads doesn't stand for ads. It stands for authorized digital sellers. And ads.txt is just a small text file that sits on the publisher's domain. It lists all of the sellers who are authorized to sell that publisher's supply. So, for example, on the msn.com ads.txt file, there is a line for AppNexus, which enables AppNexus to sell MSN supply. However, if that line was removed, then AppNexus wouldn't be able to sell the supply, and no matter what DSP you're using, you wouldn't be able to buy MSN through AppNexus, if that makes sense. It's pretty straightforward. It's really easy for every publisher and every DSP and every SSP to be enabling. And it's a really great way to stop fraud in the industry and make sure you as buyers know what supply you're buying. All right, last but not least, fee transparency. So this is the idea that with the disappearing ad tech dollar slide, all of those buyers in the middle, all those tech providers in the middle would have their fees disclosed to the buyer or the seller. Some people would say this isn't that important. They might say that as a consumer, you don't really care about how your milk reaches the shop shelf. I disagree. I think it is pretty important. As a consumer, I want to know that the milk I buy, that the farmers on the receiving end, on the far end, are getting paid enough to produce good quality milk, and they're not putting loads of junk into the milk. I want to know that the beef I'm buying is actually beef and not horse meat labeled as beef. And it's the same in advertising. So buyers want to know that the publishers are getting paid enough to produce quality content and not fake news and so forth. And they want to be able to see the whole supply chain. Again, if they can't see all of these details on the ad tech providers, how can they optimize to which ones are providing value and which ones aren't? And if they can do that, they can drive much more efficiency, lift the value of every single dollar that goes into the industry, publishers get more, everyone wins, right? The whole industry goes up a notch. So I'm pleased to announce AppNexus is working with a bunch of providers to bring true fee transparency to the auction. It's early days, but Microsoft have recently finished testing on fee transparency. And as of last month, all of their supply on the AppNexus platform now exposes their fees to buyers who are using Amino payments and similar technologies that leverage blockchain. Not that I know what that is. So yeah, that's it. That's a massive step forward, small step, but big step forward to shining a spotlight on all of those kind of on the dollar and what's happening to it, and making sure the industry becomes more efficient. So in summary, be informed, ask the right questions of the people you work with, whether it's your DSP or your ad tech providers or your agency or whoever it is. Ask the right details, ask the right questions, understand the details, and start demanding change from everyone. Work with partners who are interested in bringing trust and transparency into the industry. Most of them are, but find out what they're doing about it, push them to do a little bit more. And as an individual, just be accountable to the change. If we all band together and make this work, the advertising industry can really shift up a notch, and we can get rid of all those scandals that slow everyone down. So that's it. Thank you very much.
We need some questions because he cannot say anything, so let's have some questions, right? Fantastic. So I would ask, please stay, because I know you've been working with this for
forever.
As long as I've known you, 15, 20 years, whatever. So people sit here and they are from LATAM. What learnings on ads TXT or on GDPR or whatever, what is the highest learning you can pass along here?
The highest learning I can pass along here? Yeah. I don't know, more specifically. I mean, ads.txt is like the easiest one, like I said.
Is
does everyone know what that is?
TXT high here? Yeah, good.
Yeah, so that's an easy one.
So you already are super in that.
Like obviously the most complicated ones, like supply path optimization, they're the kind of the best ones, the ones that make a massive difference, but they take time and investment and stuff like that. But again, it is complicated, but it just requires someone, a dedicated person in the team, kind of going, right, let's have a proper look at this, let's work it out. Your costs as a buyer will go down significantly, but your results will improve as well. So.
Do we have any questions? We only have females here in the front. I love that. And Mr. Ritz. But any questions? Go on, girls. There must be a question. If it's a female that starts, then there will be way more diversity in the questions. That's proven. Because otherwise the men will just take over. So do we want the men to win, or?
About GDPR.
Just in time, because there was a male hand being raised.
I know. But it needs to be a female first, I heard.
No, talking about GDPR, and since you are in Europe and you have a lot of experience of what's going on there, since it should come at some point to LATAM, like, how do you see that working?
Brace yourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I don't know.
What's going to
and
happen?
ask me for all my presentations from the last 3 years to be ready.
I don't know. Do you know what? I don't think it was that bad, as far as I can tell. I think some companies took a massive knock, and to be honest, it's still ongoing. It's not been that long since it was implemented. So some companies are still kind of in a kind of grace period where they're allowing non-compliant stuff or not non-compliant, but publishers that aren't sending a consent signal through at the time of auction to run. They have other ways of getting around it. Legitimate consent is called. So yeah, I mean, it'll happen at some point, but the good news is there'll be tons of learning from Europe, and like when it happened in Europe, it wasn't a car crash. It just kind of takes people to change processes and stuff like that over time.
Took a lot of effort though. 2 years for most company to be ready, but yeah. We have a question from a man. Sorry about that.
Well, I don't know if you know the answer because you mentioned about blockchain. It's about blockchain.
Yeah. Okay.
How do you think it's gonna be? How long do you think it's gonna take to? How long do you think it's gonna take to blockchain to bring transparency? Because it seems to me that all those solutions are a little bit like temporarily.
I can
So
hypothetically respond
if
to
you
this one.
bring blockchain, it's gonna be like bring transparency to all the industry and.
Yeah. So good. That is a good question. I can take a stab at that one. Thanks for being gentle. Yeah, so thinking about what Microsoft are doing with Amino Payments or AppNexus is doing with Amino Payments and others, that's blockchain. It's happening now. It's obviously, it's all well and good seeing what one of the publishers has got as a fees. When you've got 10 other or 20 other providers in the middle, it doesn't necessarily help you out that much. But if you think that they're doing it already, that means everyone can be doing it already. So then it becomes a question of pressure and momentum, how quickly that starts to happen, and then obviously brands and buyers turning that into actionable insights and results and change in terms of what they're actually doing. But in theory, it could happen pretty quickly, I guess. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
We have one more here.
What is the next? What's next for AppNexus? Where are you guys heading to? I mean, the real programmatic. It's been getting a little bit more complicated or more, more transparency or so on. But that's the essence of it has been there for a while now. What are the things that we should be looking at in the months ahead or the next 12 months?
So I mean, I think programmatic is. I'm biased, but the reason I work at AppNexus is because I really believe in programmatic. I could have worked at other companies that aren't so embedded in programmatic. I really think it's the right thing to do for buyers and sellers alike in terms of efficiency. So reduce costs for buyers, improve CPMs for publishers, that kind of thing. So then it's about how do you make programmatic better and more accessible to other types of budgets other than kind of your basic banners and so forth. So I would, at Xandr, the big next thing is connected TV. That's a huge investment for the company. So again, that's about kind of opening up programmatic properly to more of the budgets and that kind of thing. But for me as well, on top of that, there's obviously new formats and that kind of stuff. But it does come down to the transparency piece for me. It should be an industry that can support the vast majority of advertiser budgets, but it needs to be able to do that in a way that people can trust and believe and not be like worried about what's happening to their money and whether there's going to be scandals and that kind of stuff.
More questions? We have time for one more. There must be one more. AppNexus, Microsoft questions? No? GDPR? Newsletter question on how to fix your newsletter on the GDPR? 2 hours later, I can tell you. Are you sure? Nothing? We still have 5 minutes. Otherwise, we take a break.
Yeah, why don't we take a couple minutes? Thank you very much,
here in
Robin.
Latam, they like
I
to
wish
talk
we were
about
playing programmatic terminology bingo because we would have nailed everything in that. Blockchain, supply path optimization. I mean, that was fantastic. Great. Thank you.